This diagram illustrates how national security operated before September 11th. You had massive databases for travel, finance, and domestic intelligence, but they existed in completely isolated silos. Information stayed within its own specific channel, rarely crossing over. That isolation was put to a devastating test on the morning of September 11th. In a matter of minutes, multiple commercial flights were taken over mid-air and turned into weapons. 2 of those hijacked planes were flown directly into the World Trade Center in New York City. A third aircraft struck the Pentagon in Virginia, causing massive structural damage. The response was extreme. For the first time, the Federal Aviation Administration grounded all commercial flights, forcing every plane in the sky to land and completely shutting down global air travel. As millions tried to process the physical destruction, intelligence agencies realized something terrifying. The attacks had successfully bypassed every existing defense system the country had in place. On the ground, entire cities were paralyzed. People wandered through dust-covered streets, completely in the dark about who was responsible or if another attack was coming. The FBI immediately launched what would become its most complex investigation to date. They began compiling destroyed passenger manifests, scattered flight records, and a few isolated phone calls. The challenge was immense. They needed to map out an invisible, decentralized network using a security apparatus built specifically to catch localized domestic criminals. Thousands of federal agents started seizing physical evidence. They boxed up hard drives, confiscated communications equipment, and copied digital logs from across the country. Analysts were soon buried under an avalanche of financial transactions, examining international wire transfers and everyday banking records line by line. By tracking these records, they discovered the hijackers had been operating for years, utilizing multiple aliases and navigating complex international travel routes to avoid detection. Investigators used data mosaicism to make sense of the fragments. They watched isolated data points converge into a highly structured web. Zooming into specific clusters reveals clear overlaps. An overseas financial transfer perfectly intersects with a domestic flight booking, turning innocent actions into verified connections. The data laid it out plainly. This was a highly coordinated operation designed explicitly to exploit the blind spots in the disjointed security systems of the time. It quickly became obvious that the network stretched well beyond American borders. Funding and logistical support were traced directly back to organized cells operating in Europe and the Middle East. Historically, international intelligence agencies fiercely protected their data. Departments were highly bureaucratic and actively resisted sharing classified information with foreign governments. That guarded approach had to end. To keep pace with the ongoing threat, distinct agencies from allied nations were forced to open their channels and begin sharing real-time intelligence at an enormous scale. The investigation acted as a severe stress test. It proved that in an era of global travel and digital finance, keeping intelligence isolated within individual borders was obsolete. For years after the attacks, one central question drove internal reviews and public commissions. Could this have been stopped? The answer lay in missed signals. Investigators found specific warnings, watch lists, and red flags sitting in the files of individual agencies. That those warnings were never communicated across departmental lines. This timeline illustrates the systemic flaw. Red warning pulses travel along a sequence, but repeatedly strike a solid barrier, the interagency firewalls. Because there was no centralized threat matrix, those firewalls didn't drop until the attacks had happened, allowing the network to operate undetected. The human cost of that systemic failure is permanently cemented into history at sites like the Flight 93 National Memorial. The investigation made one thing absolutely clear. A decentralized, complex global threat requires an equally integrated communicative defense network to stop it. Those findings provided the exact blueprint for sweeping policy changes that overhauled global threat tracking. The most visible changes happened in public view. Airport security protocols were entirely restructured, restricting gate access strictly to ticketed passengers. This introduced a permanent operational reality. Mandatory TSA screening, rigorous ID verification, and comprehensive luggage inspections became the standard for every traveler. But the larger changes are the ones you never see, as represented by this data visualization. Right now, international travel, communications, and financial data are constantly and silently cross-referenced by automated systems in the background. The massive investigation that followed September 11th functioned as an audit. It mapped the flaws of the old world and quietly engineered the global security architecture we rely on today.